as an ordinance.
Discussion? Favoring? Opposed? Item carries. To the public, we discussed earlier the reduction in tax rate. We just reduced your tax rate approximately just under a penny.
So now we can do that revenue cap.
Just so we unanimous vote to reduce taxes. So keep going.
Item 17 as an ordinance.
Discussion. Favoring, opposed, item carries.
Item 18 as an ordinance.
Discussion tagged by Costello, Glasser,
Chris?
and Christie.
Item 21 as an ordinance.
Discussion. Favoring, opposed, item carries.
23 as an ordinance.
Discussion.
Tag.
Councilman. Okay, item has been tagged, but we allow, there's some councilors in the queue. That's Councilman Green. The item has been tagged by Councilman Green, Councilor Pennington, and Councilor Lasher as well. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. As I understand this contract, it is a 20-year contract which the city does not have an out on at a fixed price, which I know Ms. Manchin considers to be a very good price. Of course, we all know it's very difficult to predict what will happen with energy prices, and I just suggested to her, I know, you know, several years ago when natural gas prices were low, kind of where they are now, a bunch of cities, the city of Houston, the city of San Antonio, and others signed up long-term natural gas contracts. And then the market went up, and the people who signed the contracts, the gas companies, couldn't deliver, and there was a lot of litigation on that. And I just think a 20-year contract with no outs, you know, we're in a terrible situation with our pensions right now because we have, you know, we agreed to something that's embedded in the legislature. Of course, we have no out on it. I just think it's a bad idea to, even if it may cost us some money in the long run, to sign a 20-year contract with a kind of, it's not a startup company, but this would be a new plant. That actually they'd be using our contract to finance. They don't want to agree to an out because they need to take it to their bank and say, you know, we got the city of Houston that's agreed to pay us $80 million, and so, you know, we could build this plant. So if it was an existing plant, I would have less concern about it, but since it's a new plant, things can always happen with construction. I think it's just kind of inviting litigation. Either they won't perform and we sue them, or we don't perform and they sue us. So I just think it's a bad idea to sign a 20-year contract for a startup project.
Councilmember, just to be clear, I know Ms. Spanian has been advocating for this, but this is a project coming out of the finance department. We have had for some time staff who work on monitoring long-term energy costs. It is a big expense for the city of Houston, and this is not unlike previous hedging contracts that we have done. So for those council members who wish to have more information, I want to make sure you know that the finance department would be providing that information.
Well, I did see their names, but I just happened to talk to her in the back, so I presume she was involved in it. I still think a long-term contract like this for a startup situation is particularly a bad idea. Thank you.
Councilmember Christie.
I'd just like to add a few more questions to that when it comes back up. That was one. Is this contract used to develop the plant? Has it even been started? Second is, I understand that Austin has a 3.8 cent negotiated price. Are we paying too much there? They talk about this being 6.7% of the annual load. I think I have my figures right, that we spend about $165, $66 million a year projected. That was a 3-year projected. And I think it's going to be more like 11% of the expenditures instead of 6.7. But I relate that to the kilowatt usage to the dollar amount. So I'd like that question answered. How much will it be? Insurance protections, it's got to be in the contract. Are the transmission lines in place? Texas because they don't have all the transmission lines. The transmission lines, the center point and such as that in, we just signing a contract for pie in the sky. They worry about comparing this to gas price fluctuations. You know, this locks in for 20 years. You can lock in gas price fluctuations at lowest in historical prices at 2.49 this morning, I think. You can lock it in with a take or pay in 10 years, so we can keep gas price fluctuations being out of the argument. And I think I worry about event of default. Is $1 million sufficient for failure to cancel the contract? So just those questions I would ask to that. This is a big decision, 20-year contract. I think we can do better on the price.
Yes, sir, we spend a lot of money on fuel. As I said, our average price over the last, I guess the last decade has been in the 6-something range, but as everybody understands, we are at a historically low fuel cost period. It's not going to last. And if I could lock in these natural gas prices for the next 20 years, I'd be doing that deal. But, you know, they're all hoping that the price comes back up again. Mayor Pro Tem Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, there's not the standard termination for convenience clause. There is a cancellation opportunity in the event of a default, and the $1 million in security proves insufficient. So those are spelled out in section 5.1. So one of them is, for example, if the company were to go bankrupt, or I'm sure their performance is impacted in any way, then we can cancel under those grounds. So those are listed in the contract. We just don't have the termination of convenience.
We can't terminate for convenience on our side if they're providing the energy requested at the price, the contracted price specified. Yes, sir. Councilmember Martin.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. When I read the information, the material, especially the information from Director Icken, it made a lot of sense because this is just the city's hedging strategy. Hedging cost at the lowest point that they may be over the next 20 years. So I thought it was a good concept and a good idea. And I vividly remember when Southwest Airlines several years ago hedged jet fuel prices and just dominated the market because of their strategy way back when to hedge prices at the lowest point. So I think it's a very sound strategy. What would help me in my preparation for this would be the benchmark as it relates to a number of other cities. Councilmember Christie mentioned Austin. I'd love to see Dallas, San Antonio, and some of the other cities to see what they're doing, because in this day and age, it makes perfect sense for all cities and all companies and even individuals to hedge prices at the lowest cost. So I'd be curious as to what other cities are doing, but I think it's a very sound strategy.
Thank you, sir, and we'll get that information from the other cities. The only significant difference is that Austin and San Antonio actually own their power system, power company, so they have the ability to drive a lower price than you know, Dallas, Fort Worth, Corpus Christi, and so forth. Councilor Pennington.
Well, I just say one final thing, that obviously technology changes quickly, and I understand about hedging. But thank goodness we didn't have a 20-year cell phone contract. You know, so bad things can happen. I mean, they're positive things that you can argue both ways. Just think that historically, a long-term energy contract has been a bad idea in Texas, I think.
This item has been tapped.